Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. Today we're going to talk about math and One Punch Man, a hero nobody knows. So, One Punch Man, a hero nobody knows, is a game that seemingly nobody knows, but maybe they should. And I want to talk about that, right? Like, I want to talk about the game. I want to talk about One Punch Man in general, and I want to talk about how math is used along the way. Um, and I want to talk about my feelings about the game and One Punch Man in general. And oh yeah, there's gonna be spoilers. There's absolutely gonna be spoilers. Spoilers about the game. Spoilers about One Punch Man in general. And I just want to say that just to give you fair warning. With that being said, spoilers ahead. Let's get into it. Okay, so with One Punch Man, a hero nobody remembers. Oh, sorry. With One Punch Man, a hero nobody knows. It's a fighting RPG that takes place between like the start of One Punch Man to pretty much the end of season one. Put it another way, it's like season one of the anime, right? You get the beginning of One Punch Man up to the Boros stuff, right? Um, and yeah, let's begin. So, what I had in mind is talking about the fighting. For me, it's an interesting thing because, right, math is everywhere and in everything. Gaming is no exception to that. No exception to that. I'm sorry, it's getting late. Um, and with gaming in particular, not only is it not an exception to the idea of mapping and everything. It's a glowing example of it being in everything. It's this beautiful intersection of math and art, and I feel like fighting games and RPGs are two genres that like really drive that point home. Like math's all over the place in some really in your face ways, which I'm down for. Like I'm absolutely here for it. Um, so that will be the focus, but of course we're going to talk about other elements of the game, and here's the other big thing about the why of that all. So when I like talking about combat mechanics and stuff like that, partially because again it's a good way to see math in a way that kind of pulls you in, but it also shapes the rest of the game, right? If you're dealing with a game that has combat, that has fighting, right, you need to be able to fight. You need to be able to explore that combat and understand how it goes in order to explore that game and how it goes, right? And with RPGs and fighting games, again, like they're two genres that they work really well of blending that math and blending that art and story progression. And together, it's like crazy, right? And so that's the idea. So with One Punch Man, the idea is like you have elements of it that it's like a traditional fighter, and then you have all the RPG elements of it. And if you've been following like the Bandai Namco games, then you see a certain formula crop up over the years, and that's not a good thing. That's not a bad thing, but it's a thing. And you do see that like you see it in games like Dragon Ball Xenoverse and Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 and the Jump Force game. Um, but you see elements leading to those sort of games over the years. Notably with Dragon Ball games, like I think if you think about like the older like Budokai Tenkaichi games slash Sparking games, like I feel like you could see that influence in a lot of games past it, and you had games leading up to that too, right? But I mentioned all that, and I give all that background to like kind of shape that picture where it's like, hey, a lot of this has kind of been built up over years, so I feel like that helps in terms of how it flows. That if you're not a fan of that sort of stuff and those sort of games, then this might not connect with you. But so let's get into what's happening. So with the fighting to begin with, you have the idea, the basic idea that you are dishing out damage while trying to avoid taking it, right? That is the premise. And that works in a lot of fighting games, it works in a lot of RPGs, and it's already an inherently mathematical idea, right? You're starting off at 100%, and at a minimum, you're trying to not reach 0%. At the same time, you're trying to get your opponent to 0%, and you have this complex interplay. And then like in different games with different combat systems, you have that basic idea like explode, right? So here's how it goes in One Punch Man, a hero nobody knows. So you have that basic idea that you have your characters, you have their health. You're trying to take your opponent down to zero. They're trying to take you down to zero. You're trying to not get down to zero, and they're trying to not get down to zero, right? So not only do you have math on a base level, but then you have the idea like, hey, you're doing different combos, and you might have the matches be timed, right? And so you have that idea where like, okay, so I need to get them down to zero before it's time. And in the case of One Punch Man, a hero nobody knows, if I don't do that, then all of a sudden I'm losing too. So you have those conditions, right? Either you lose because you went down to zero, or because you didn't get the opponent's health down to zero before the time ran out. So you have that idea. So it's like, well, then what expands that idea, right? So you have that idea of like, okay, you have the health, you have the timing, you have the combos, and a lot of different fighting games. And then in One Punch Man, a hero nobody knows, you have the idea of battle types, right? And you have the idea of experience points, and you have the idea of your class. And all these like work together as you progress. So let's get into that. So let's actually start with um, the basics with your regular levels. So you gain experience points in a couple different ways, and we'll branch out a little bit. But let's focus on the general kind of experience that you're getting. You gain experience points, and through those you level up. And when you level up, you get growth points. And when you get growth points, you can change your parameters slash stats, right? And so you have HP, which you know you're dealing with your health. You have attack with you, sorry, where you're dealing with the strength of your normal attacks. You have the killer move stat, where you're dealing with the strength of those sort of attacks. You have the idea of technique and like arrival, and with technique, um, it controls how your movement gauge goes. So it's like it controls like how you're charging up your energy and how you're dashing about on the field, right? And then with arrival, it's like it factors into like when characters are arriving onto the scene, because it's like it's not just one on one. It might start that way in a lot of situations, but the idea is it could get up to three versus three. And so, just on this base level, like, right, you have the idea of dishing out damage and then taking it. And then it's like, hey, well, each fight that you're doing, right, you're gaining experience points and you're leveling up and your stats are being boosted, right? Or your parameters. And here's the thing about that, right? When you're gaining these growth points, you're distributing it to the stats that I mentioned. Like you get to make that decision. Now, throughout the regular gameplay, you can't really alter that. Now, later in the game, like you eventually get to the point where you either find a secret ticket or you can buy a secret ticket. And I think that's like after you've already beaten the game. But there, you if you find like the secret store, you can use that ticket and reset your parameters. Like bring everything down to one, but you get to keep your growth points and distribute that how you want. So in any case, right, like you have just like the math on that base level, but then adding in the stats, right? But that's not all, right? Because then you have the idea of not only do you get general experience points where you're leveling up, but you have different battle types, right? And here's how that goes. So each battle type has their strengths and their weaknesses, and moves that you can only use in that battle type. And sometimes they might be able to like move over to different similar battle types, but um, like there's multiple weapon types and multiple machine types for the battle types, and some of those can play ball with each other, like especially the weapon types. But my point is like each of them do have like specific moves that are associated with the battle types. So you have standard battle type, where you can use like a lot of different martial arts moves, and it's pretty balanced from a space strength and like range sort of level, right? Then you also have like weapon types for your battle types, where one you can do like blunt instruments and stuff like that, and one is like sharp instruments, and there are different attacks associated with that. And with those, like you could do different things like short range, long range, mid range. And I feel like even though like the standard is like supposed to be the most balanced, weapon types are pretty good. Then with machine type, you have machine types as well. Like you have machine type C, which is my favorite, and that's the one that's like it's like Genos. It's like fast paced, and even though it's like supposed to not be as powerful as I guess like the other two types, it absolutely is powerful, and that makes sense to me. And so it's like it's fast and it's strong and it hits hard and it has some good combos. Um, so anyway, right? You have those different types. You have like standard. You have weapon. You have machine, and those two types have subtypes, right? Like different types of those types. Then you also have things like a power type, which is like good at close range and like heavy hitting. You have like the psychic type, which is good at like long distance. You also have like the monster type, which is pretty balanced. That you get later on in the game, like kind of like after you beat that too, right? So you have like these different types. They have their strengths, they have their weaknesses. They're doing different things, strength wise, speed wise, and doing things at different ranges. And the idea is like none of them is like super broken. Uh, all of them are, I think, like the way they're situated is like you might have a style that suits your play style better, and that makes sense. Um, or you might just want to be trying out different ones. And the idea is like I think they're all balanced enough that one isn't necessarily going to be like objectively better, but you can make arguments, I'm sure, right? But I think it's like hard to say like, oh, well, one is just objectively the best. They all have strengths, they all have weaknesses, and you can play around. And I think that's well designed, that's well balanced in a sense, right? Like there's definitely ones that I prefer, right? Because there are ones that I think do suck, but it's like, oh no, I can see an argument where someone might say, oh, well, maybe that doesn't suck. Maybe like I don't connect with it well, or maybe to me it's not great and it's not fun to play, but someone else could get some use out of that, right? So I think it's to the point where just in terms of what you could do, none of the types are broken. And so in any case, right, you have the different types and you have all their differences, right? And those battle types, they have experience points and levels associated with them, because as you're going on, right, and you're gaining your general experience, you're also gaining your type experience. And so like whatever type you have equipped, you're gaining levels. And so as your types are increasing, sorry, as you're increasing those experiences, is you're increasing your type experience points, right? Like you're able to do more with the types. You can get up to level 5, and the idea is like at each level, once you're able to level up, you're able to add in like things like different slots, and you get different combos. Um, and with each type, right, they have up to 3 slots situated for um, killer moves, and then 1 slot for the super killer move. And for the killer moves, most of those are dealing damage. Some like short range, some mid range, some long range. Some are buffs. And then like super killer moves, like they're dealing like a whole lot of damage. But there's a caveat with that, right? Like so, as you're going throughout the game, you'll have you have your health short, right? But you also have a gauge that indicate. Sorry, you also have like a gauge for the amount of power like that you're building up, and you can get up to 9, right? And so it's building up on its own as you're going through the battle, but like through your combos or through charging up, you can increase the speed at which that power gauge is like building up, right? And then you have like your killer boos, your super killer boos, and stuff like that, where they all have like a certain amount of bars that they're taking from that gauge. So it's like you might have some killer moves take up 2 bars, or some that take up 3 or 4 or even 5 in some cases. And there's that, right? And so once you charge up, you can use your move, but you got to be careful, right? Because like your opponent can interrupt that move. So it's like, hey, while you're in the middle of attack, you can like really go in, right? You're doing combos with your basic moves, but then like, oh, maybe you throw in a killer move, and then for your super killer move, um, and this is going to tie back to the type. Just give me a second. So with the super killer move, you have the idea that there's a mode change, right? Like you build up. So for your power gauge, you're building up 6 bars, and if you get to 6 bars, at that point you can do a mode change, and with that mode change, If you have a super killer move equipped, you can use that, right? Um, and just go forth. And that does a devastating amount of damage if you like actually pull it off. So yeah, you have this idea that uh, you're using your killer moves and your super killer moves, and that is all dependent on what moves you have equipped with your battle type, right? And if you max all your battle types, you can have three killer moves and the one super move, right? But it takes time to build that up. But the idea too is that you just don't automatically get those moves. You still have to like win them through battle, or things like that, right? Or go through your missions and all that. And there's math and all that too, right? So it's like an interesting thing to me because like when I first unlocked the monster type, after you like beat the game, like you don't even if you level it up, right? You don't necessarily have all the moves right away. And that depends on how you went about leveling up too, right? Because maybe you could unlock some missions ahead of time and just like build it that way. But it also depends on your level and the damage that you're dishing out. Um, so yeah, so you have the idea of the basic combat, like you're dishing out damage while trying to avoid taking it. You have your health gauges, you have your power gauge. Uh, you have the idea that different characters will, jump in over time. And you can have up to three versus three if it goes that way. You can see on the screen that the characters are coming, and you have like the time window to which they're coming. But if you're like dishing out damage, for instance, like if you're just racking up combos, all of a sudden you might be like decreasing the time to which they show up, and then you can alternate between your fighters. And so you have that element of it building to that basic gameplay. Then you have the idea of like there are natural events where it's like, hey, you might have like lightning drop down, and that's like dishing out damage, or meteorites. So you have to like dodge the lightning or dodge the meteorites, and try to trap your opponent into that and deal out more damage. You also have like items that might drop in the middle of battle that like give you temporary buffs, like maybe your attack or your defense will increase or something like that, right? Or maybe your power gauge gets maxed out. So you have just those things on that base level, right? But is you're battling, right? Is you're exploring the game, you're gaining points. Sorry, you're gaining experience points, and you're leveling up, and you're boosting your stats, and you're becoming more formidable. And at the same time, you're exploring different battle types, and the battle types have their own experience, like their type experience, and that allows you to do more moves. And so you have the idea that you have the association, you're doing missions for them, you're doing it either at their main HQ or as their branch associations. But either way, uh, you're plowing through those, and as you're doing that, like each of those types of missions are ranked themselves, and so it's like, hey, maybe I'm doing all the ones that are like on level one, and then ones at level two, and then level three, and stuff like that, and each of them have like stars associated with them. Where if you do certain conditions, you'll get like stars, and if you get all three stars, you get an item. Like you might already be getting different items anyway with beating it, but it's like, oh, well, you need to get 3 stars to get the specific item in addition to the other ones that you're already getting for winning. Okay, so you just have like a lot of math just involved on every conceivable level, and then the other thing is like your class. So throughout the world of One Punch Man, whether we're talking about a hero nobody knows, or we're talking about the anime, or talking about the manga, or talking about the initial webcomic, you have the idea of a class system for the heroes, right? Like S, A, B, and C. And so throughout the game, right, look, you start as a C class hero, but you gain association points through the missions that you go through, as well as, just like the story. And as you do that, that allows you to take on even more missions and get more rewards, and just like put you in a different class, like literally in this case, and then also like gives you discounts on items. And let's talk about items more in depth. Let's talk about money. So yes, you have items that you get in battle that just drop, but you have items that you can buy throughout the course of the game with the money that you earn, right? And you can earn that money through your missions, right? Whether we're talking about the main missions, just the missions that you get from the association branch that aren't necessarily story related, or just like side quests that pop up because you'll be exploring a town, you're meeting different people, and they're having different missions that you'll have to, oh, get this item, get that item, save this person, save that person, get the points and all that stuff, and get the money. And so with the idea of money. It's like it's something that's inherently mathematical. And here you're building up your item, building up your money, and you're buying different items. And so sometimes those items are clothes. Sometimes they're items that like give you buffs in battle. Or sometimes you're buying like skills. And that's another thing that I meant to mention. So in this game, skills work like equipment and gear do in a lot of RPGs, where it's like they boost your stats, they allow you to do something. Like some might be like pretty straightforward, where they boost your HP or boost your attack, defense, and stuff like that, right? But then there are some other ones where it's like, hey, or maybe if you buy this skill, it's actually allowing you to gain more money or gain more experience points, right? And then you can come across different items that do similar things to some of those skills, but you can mix and match. And not only can you buy skills, but you can gain them too, right? So the idea is like between the money and between the missions, you're gaining different items. Some like are useful in battle. Some are just ones that you have like for your custom character, right? Like so it affects their appearance. But some of those things that you can buy will allow you to do missions later on, right? Like, or you have to be like wearing a certain suit or wearing certain glasses. But my whole thing is like there's a lot going on in this game, and I with the combat, right? It helps you navigate your characters and how they're interacting with the world. It is the core of the gameplay, and that is one of the things that I find interesting, like in a lot of RPGs, like right, like the combat mechanics and systems are interesting in and of themselves, but they're also how you're exploring that world, right? You're growing and learning as your characters are, and you're exploring the world as they are. And what I like about video games, well, is a lot of things actually, but one of the things that does not come up much that I really like is that video games are an excellent an excellent opportunity to practice and build empathy. Like you're literally in someone else's shoes, right? You're like again, like you're growing as they're growing, you're learning as they're learning, you're struggling as they're struggling, and so on and so forth. And in this case, with One Punch Man, a hero nobody knows, you're playing as a custom created character that was inspired by like Saitama, right? Um, and I think that was an interesting way to go. And speaking of Saitama, let's talk about him real quick. Like he lives up to the One Punch like name. Like within the story, he realistically can't be damaged, and his hits just they do the maximum amount of damage and like just zero out everybody, which is like it's an interesting thing because it's not something that you normally see, but like it makes perfect sense in the story and what you know about the series. I think there would be like an temptation to like take that down. Um, and there is, to be fair, like if you're in the battle mode, which I haven't really mentioned, because there's a free battle mode, a local battle mode, and you can just like play the characters as is. With Saitama, there's a version of him that you can unlock called Dream Saitama, where he can actually be hurt and stuff like that. And but that's a whole different thing. As far as like the main line Saitama, that is not a dream. He lives up to like what you see in the show and manga and webcomic. And I think that's fascinating because there's math in that too, right? He cannot be realistically damaged. Like you can hit him with so many different things. You're not seeing that health bar actually trickle down. Or if it is trickling down, it's not in a way that you could see. Because I'm not sure like the behind the scenes mechanic behind that. Because like if you're going at face value, right, you're not seeing it actually tick down. But it could be one of those things where maybe it is, but his health is just so high that you're not going to realistically be able to know that, and you're not in a position where you're going to be able to realistically find it out because he can one shot you if you're on the receiving end of it, right? And for the villains, it's like he's one shotting them and it's done, right? So you never really see him be in that position. And like for the record, right? Like there are times where like maybe he's a character that's surviving, and the characters that are arriving are dishing out an attack, and so then all of a sudden it's fight over. But sometimes he might just arrive and there's like more characters coming, or maybe you start off the battle and he's already on your team. You can switch into him, and so you can play as him, and it's like a pretty creative thing because there might be a battle where like maybe you were doing well within the actual battle, but within the story your character isn't, which I hate, by the way. I hate when games do that, But the whole thing is like, well, then maybe Saitama comes in, and all of a sudden you're playing as him, and bam, it's over. So I think the way they use it is just like it's not happening often because you're following your character who is interacting with Saitama throughout, but as well as other characters and being mentored by them and all this good stuff. So I don't think they overdo it. Um, so there's actually so much more I could talk about, but I actually do want to wrap this up. Um, but my whole thing is there's a lot of math in gaming, a lot of math and everything. It is everything, and I think with math and gaming, there's such a wonderful combo because gaming is like, right? It's like, hey, here's some math, here's some art, and even though there's always going to be math behind the scenes that you're not seeing, right? Uh, Games are pretty explicit with their math, especially fighting games, especially RPGs. And so having a fighting RPG, I think is really great to see that. And when it comes to One Punch Man, a hero nobody knows, I really enjoyed the game. It was pretty immersive, pretty fun, and I think the focus was good, right? Because it's focusing on your character and their journey, which is going to be your journey, exploring like the hero associating, seeing, like exploring the world, exploring a lot of events from One Punch Man, and just seeing how that all flows together. And and like I said, like they do have a free battle mode, so if you just want to play around with that without like the stakes, yeah, you can do that. But a lot of the stream to me is from that story, and really the world that's surrounding that story, right? Because it's that exploration, it's like that ability to like live in that world, and you're just going out there and you're doing hero things. Also, like a lot of typical characters that you come to expect show up. Saitama's a big part too. Genos, I don't necessarily like what they did with Genos at certain points because it's not as fun, but still an awesome character overall. Um, Tornado definitely makes some appearances, so you get to work with her sometimes, as well as like other S class people and just other heroes in general, where you're learning things from them. Also, special shout out to Moon Min Rider, great character, very heroic, and like I said, like Tornado, like one of my favorite characters from that series. Um, but yeah, so I enjoyed One Punch Man, a hero nobody knows. It is a game that it feels like nobody knows. It came out in 2020, but like I didn't really hear anyone talk about it. And then like if you look into the scores, they were not great. And like I don't understand that. Like and I've seen like, some reviews on it. It's like, okay, you nitpicking, like, and that's not to say that the game is perfect, right? Just that I think it's better than some people are giving it credit for. And if you like One Punch Man, I think if you actually like it, then you'll probably like this too. And maybe you don't, but like I think there's a strong possibility. In any case, I enjoyed it, and I've been playing that recently, so it's been nice. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Professor Prime out.